Is that a normative statement? You know what's going to be normative? Me being your new dad when I marry your mom. You may have been wondering, what's been going on with all these voter suppression bills all around the country? The one in Georgia, there've been ones in Texas, the Carolinas, all throughout the country. Republican legislatures have been pushing anti-voter restriction bills that make it harder for people to vote. And you may have been wondering, man, where's all this coming from? Well, we found out where it's coming from, okay? And honestly, it's actually really scary. So what's been going on is that apparently there's been an underground cabal. It sounds like something out of a movie, okay? But this is just what the Republicans do. There's been an underground cabal working to make sure that they push as many anti-voter bills as possible after the 2020 election. They've been working fastidiously behind the scenes to make sure that we get as few laws protecting the right to vote on the books as possible in as many states as they possibly can. And they're pushing them. They're giving basically templates for legislatures to push to make it harder for people to vote. That's why all of these laws are coming out so quickly, and they all look almost exactly the same. It's almost like someone's writing it for them. But in all actuality, it seems like that's actually what's happening. Let's take a look at this. There's a video of the video of what happened for this dark money group was recently uncovered as being behind these voter laws.
I'm Ari Berman, voting rights reporter for Mother Jones, with an exclusive new video from Documented about a right-wing group leading the GOP's war on voting.
I had one message for him. Do not wait to sign that bill. If you wait even an hour, you will look weak. This bill needs to be signed immediately.
You're watching Jessica Anderson.
We know that the fraud is real. We know that it can be proven.
These choices really show that the swamp is alive and well.
The left is using this basically as psychological warfare.
A former Trump administration official and now the executive director of Heritage Action for America, talking to top donors in Tucson, Arizona in late April. She's telling them about a meeting she had with Georgia Governor Brian Kemp just 3 days before the Georgia legislature passed a sweeping bill rolling back voting access in that state.
The state legislature in Georgia got it done, and you can help own this and cheerlead this if you sign it quickly. Do not delay.
But according to the video, Heritage Action did much more than just advocate for the bill.
Iowa was the first state that we got to work in, and we did it quickly and we did it quietly. Honestly, nobody noticed. At the end of the day, the bill that Governor Kemp signed and the Georgia legislature marshaled through had 8 key provisions that Heritage recommended.
This leaked video reveals how Heritage is leading a massive right-wing campaign to suppress voting rights in key battleground states like Georgia, Arizona, Florida, and Iowa just this year.
We're working with these state legislators to make sure they have all of the information they need to draft the bills. In some cases, we actually draft them for them, or we have a sentinel on our behalf give them the model legislation. So it has that grassroots, from the bottom up type of vibe.
While these bills are being sold as protecting quote unquote election integrity, the real purpose seems to be to help Republicans win elections. They plan to spend $24 million over the next 2 years in Michigan, Nevada, Wisconsin, Texas,
Pennsylvania,
and beyond to quote unquote right the wrongs of November.
And we are going to take the fierce fire that is in every single one of our bellies to right the wrongs of November, to right the wrongs of the mistreatment against these men, and move it into other states.
The Heritage Foundation is one of the best funded think tanks in Republican circles. They write the policy, and their sister organization, the dark money group Heritage Action, makes it happen. From writing and advocating these anti-democratic bills to leading the effort to block the For the People Act in Congress, Heritage is weaponizing Trump's big lie to motivate their donors and their base to strip Americans of their fundamental right to vote. To read
So that's about as good of a wrap up that I could do of basically what's been going on. To right the wrongs of November. Did you hear that? To right the wrongs of November. So they took the big lie. If you didn't know, the big lie is Donald Trump saying that the election was stolen from him, even though the court said it didn't happen, even though the Supreme Court said it didn't happen. States are all certified, and there is no way, shape, or form that in any way the election was stolen, or like ballots were flipped, or like voting machines that were made in like China or whatever, like what stole the election from him. That didn't happen. Donald Trump was an unliked president, and he was beat by a candidate who was more liked than him. That's literally just what happened. That's it. And they want to right that wrong, how they were wronged, okay? What do you think they mean when they say wronged? It's not just as in they lost, wronged as in something happened. Brian Kemp has contempt for voting rights. Oh, dude, hey, listen, you gotta email Stacey Abrams that one, okay? I think she'd like that one. It's like segregation never ended. Oh, absolutely not. The Heritage Foundation, one of the best funded think tanks in the entire country, has been running for years a dark money group that has been going under the cover to give a grassroots feel. So they basically arm like their little agent with a voting rights restriction bill that they have, that they send into Republican Congresses to make it feel like it came from out of nowhere. You know, it's just been working. They said that it happened in Iowa. They did it quickly. They did it quietly, and nobody noticed. Unfortunately for them, people are starting to notice as more and more states start to ramp up their restrictions and voter laws, and all of them start to look really eerily similar. People are like, man, maybe there's something wrong going on. And you know what? They found it. It's the Heritage Foundation behind it. Again, that's been funding almost every single awful bill that's been harming the American people and people abroad with American foreign policy for decades now. The guy who helped spearhead this, not only was he someone who very much loved restricting voter rights, he was actually a senior advisor to the Bush administration. So he went from the Bush administration to work into the Heritage Foundation, and now he's spreading his want to make sure that as few people vote as possible, to make it so that Republicans get as much vote as possible, and they can quickly and surgically target demographics of people who do not vote for Republicans to make it sure that they can win as many elections as possible. What I really think happened is that after the 2020 election, they found a massive opening with Republicans being completely willing to throw away the voting rights of millions of Americans across the country so they can make sure that they can get as many votes as possible so they won't have to deal with that again. Instead of actually fixing their policy, instead of moving left, instead of convincing people that they're correct, they know that they're not correct. They don't care about people. Have you seen Republican states? Those people are living in like third world countries. Like, I'm sorry, those people look like they're living in developed nations. There are people in the freaking Bible Belt, like the Deep South, that are still getting like E. coli from their water. You're telling me Republicans care about these people? Don't make me laugh. They just want to keep their comfy seats in Congress, and they want to keep their big bucks rolling. So they want to make sure that they can that they don't have to work for it. I mean, what's better money than money that you don't have to work for? And boy, do they hate working. Except when it comes to taking the rights away from Americans. Then do they get to work, and boy, do they know how to work, okay? And they know how to work hard. A dark money group pushing voter restrictions all across the country to make it so that we can't vote. They even stopped H.R. 1. That's how powerful they are. A massive voting rights bill, which was the first piece of legislation that the Democrats passed once they took power back in 2018. H.R. 1, massive bill. They helped stop that. And if we don't act now, the likelihood of the Democrats being able to keep the House in the 2022 election cycle is dwindling. It's very low right now, and it's even dwindling further than that. If they don't do something now, the possibility of the Democrats ever taking like the House and the Senate again is cut, because if these laws are able to stay on the books, then people of color, LGBTQ people, poor people, the elderly, the disabled will find it more hard to vote, and lots of them won't be able to vote. And those are all demographics of people who vote to like a plurality or overwhelmingly for Democrats. This is what we're working with now. And they want to make sure that they can hold on to power as much as possible, not by playing the game, not by playing politics, but taking rights away from Americans until they have their perfect little world where nobody gets to vote except for the people who they think should vote. They have to be stopped. Call your congressperson. Do something. Make people aware of what we just watched. That's abominable to me personally. To think that someone can just push through policy to make it so that people don't get disenfranchised to vote. Awful. That's what we're working with. We have to make sure that the Democrats act, because if not, it could be too late. And I don't want it to be too late for the tens of millions of Americans around the country that deserve the right to vote, that they would like to take away from them. We have an opportunity to make something happen. Let's do it. We should have an issue with turnout. We should make it easier to vote. We absolutely should. Like, our issue here isn't like too many people voting. Our issue is like too little people voting. We have the worst voting track record of, I think, all like developed nations. We're just like in the bottom of all of them. We're like a 50-60% voter. I think like just 50 to 60% voter participation is awful, while other countries enjoy like 70, 80, 90% voter participation. People just don't vote here, either because they can't or they don't understand what's happening. Who's losing the right to vote? Well, one in particular is felons. In many states around the country, if you're a felon, then you just completely lose your right to vote. Even if you serve your time, you don't ever get to vote again, which I think is absolutely ridiculous, especially when there's so many like felonies that you can commit that don't actually involve like the worst, most heinous crimes like murdering or like assaulting someone or something like that. They're felonies and they get your rights taken away, like marijuana possession or heroin possession. Felony disenfranchisement is cringe. Felony disenfranchisement should be like unconstitutional. It's incredible to me how they think that you serve your time and now you finally get and you finally get out and you have to and you don't get any of your rights back. What's the point of even going to jail in the first place? Just because we like to watch you have part of your life taken away? Is that it? What's the point? You should be able to go back to like regular society. Why are you held back after you served your time? The time was supposed to be the punishment for committing a crime. You shouldn't have those punishments follow you for the rest of your life if you served your time. And then on top of that, what they'll do is they'll add like poll taxes, where, oh, you can get your rights back. All you have to do is pay $100,000 to the state, and then it's going to be great. Then you get your rights back. You know, people won't be able to pay that. So then they'll be crushed under a mountain of debt that they won't have to pay, that they can't pay, and then they'll never get their rights back or spend decades paying it off, and then all of that time where they could have been voting will just be wasted. And then once again they get what they want, restricting people's rights to vote. And with like a voter ID laws, there's no reason to have a voter ID law. There's just none. There's no reason. For me, voting is like one of the most important constitutional rights that you have. Is one of the most important human rights. It's not a constitutional right. It's not an American right. It's a human right. I think it's up there with like food and water and healthcare. Voting is extremely important. And any barrier between you and the ballot box should be overwhelmingly proven to be needed for you to be able to vote. And if that isn't proven, then there's no reason for that law to exist. It is a human right. I think there should be very few barriers between you and eating, or basically none between you and eating, the same way between you and voting. Voter fraud isn't a problem in this country. Anybody who tries to tell you that is lying to your face. Ask them, can you provide any evidence? They'll provide you a bunch of like random shit. Maybe they'll even send you like a fucking Facebook video, but they won't send you like actual concrete data because it doesn't exist. You know what? Here, let me see. You want to see someone who tried to prove that voter fraud was real? Here, let me tell you about this story real quick. Armed QAnon supporter drove to Philadelphia to deliver a truck full of fake votes. So this guy, who was like, voter fraud is real and they're trying to steal the election. They're stealing it. The Biden crime family is stealing this election. They have to be stopped. This guy got his freaking Ruger, okay, and hopped into the back of his truck and chased down a truck carrying air conditioning parts because he was convinced that they were carrying fake ballots that were hand signed by Nancy Pelosi and Kamala Harris to steal the election. Okay, that's what happens. If you believe that voter fraud is real, just so you know, you're on the level of like stupidity as that person who's like sitting in jail right now because he held like some freaking like USPS driver at gunpoint for thinking that he's carrying fake ballots when he was carrying like rings and coils for air conditioning parts, okay? That's the sort of company that you have. You're ridiculous. It's stupid. It doesn't exist, all right? And don't come at me with that garbage. There's no reason for us to have those sort of like restricting voting laws, except for Republicans to target people that they don't want to vote. And that's it.